What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about a topic that the most number of people have asked me questions on, and that is, do the new stance options affect performance? All right, let's go. All right, before we get into the actual test, because I ran a bunch of tests with this, with like, you know, stance and no stance and height adjustments, no height adjustments. I did a bunch of different things, and I'm going to show you all of that data and all of the test results there. But before we get into that, for anybody who doesn't understand why this is actually a thing and why we wouldn't just like take IVT's word for it, it's because the body kits and the vanity tires do have an effect on performance, and they're not supposed to. So if you put a wide body kit on your car, you can see that it visually moves the wheels outward, giving the car a wider track width. Now in real life, a wider track width definitely helps with like the physics of the car. It basically gives the car a little bit more stability, gives it better handling. And in the game, it actually does the exact same thing. If you widen the wheels, it actually makes it handle better. Now it also does that with vanity tires, even though the difference in the vanity tires is very, very small. But you can see when you put on certain vanities, you can see that the rim actually moves out or in depending on which vanity is. And unfortunately, that stuff is tied to the physics of the vehicle, and we can't really get away from that at all. So when they introduced the stance options, when they announced it and they showed the wheel moving and you have the camber and all these different things you can do to the wheel, the natural assumption is that it was also going to be tied to the physics. So I decided to test it because I got asked a ton of questions, like literally a ton of questions came through in the DMs, comments, and videos. Everybody wants to know, does the stance of the car actually affect the performance? Now, the official word from IVT is that it does not. I actually asked them directly while I was there in France. They said it doesn't, but obviously we didn't think it did with the other stuff either until we started testing it, and then all of a sudden we find out, okay, yeah, the body kits do affect things. So here we are, season 8 is here, and we need to figure out if this actually matters. I'm going to set this up for you and tell you exactly how I tested this. The first thing is, I was testing cars anyways. If you didn't catch my rebalancing tests, I did a video already where I tested every single car that got a rebalance this season, and I've got tests for before the rebalance and after the rebalance. I tested them twice. So I've got all that data, and that's all in a video as well. You can go check that out if you want. But while I was testing that, I actually ran it a couple of times. So like I would run one run with like fully wide wheels, and then one run with the wheels pushed all the way in. So it was the extremes. Like I would have it, you know, I had the extreme on one end and the extreme of the other. And if I was to see any real differences, that's where I would see it, is at the extremes. So I was testing those along with those other cars. So in those tests, I tested 17 different cars with full wide, full narrow, and I recorded the times for both. And I didn't record a time. If there was a mistake, I would just restart the run because I was already testing these cars anyways, trying to get the best times. So to be honest with you, these times are actually pretty optimized. They're pretty good. And so let me just flash on the screen here so you can see it, the actual data of full wide versus full narrow and what the differences are. As you can see, now each one of these lines is a different car. So as you can see, the differences, they vary depending on the car. Some of them are really close. Like the third car down is a 2 millisecond difference between those two. But then you go a little bit further, you find one that's about a half a second, 550 milliseconds down in the middle. So it really did vary. But on average, the difference between full narrow and full wide was only about 0.2 seconds. So 220 milliseconds is really nothing. It's very, very small. And that's the average amongst all 17 cars. And the more cars that I tested, I'm sure the closer that number would get to zero. It would just, every time I added a new car to the list, it seemed like it just went down farther and farther. So with that said, I don't have any reason to believe that the actual track width, just the width, I'm not talking about camber yet. We'll get to that in a moment. Just the width, either the narrow wheels or fully wide pushed all the way out, I don't feel like it makes a difference at all. Now, not only did the data not show a difference, but my feelings towards the car didn't change while I was driving it. I didn't see a difference visually. I didn't see anything that was gonna lead me to believe that there was better handling. It didn't feel any different. It didn't accelerate different. It just felt pretty much the same. Now, let's move on to the camber and the height, because the camber and the height are sort of linked together here. Basically, to test this, I did 5 runs with the exact same car with full camber, fully cambered out wheels, to no camber, like fully straight wheels. So in the process of doing this, I did adjust the height a little bit of the car to see what was going on, just to kind of see if there was any difference in the feeling there. And here's what I found out. So no height adjustment, just the stock height with full camber, I was running an average of 227.062, so about a 227 flat. With completely narrow wheels and the tallest the car could go, I raised it all the way up and no camber at all, I was running a 227.131. Almost no difference there. Now here's the interesting part though. When I went full narrow and I lowered the car all the way down, because the only way you can lower the car all the way down is if you have the wheels tucked inside the fenders. You don't have to be full narrow, but it has to be inside the fenders. Otherwise the game will correct you and move the wheels for you. All the way down, I dropped the car as low as possible and I made the wheels as narrow as possible. By doing that with no camber, I was running a time average of 226.690. It's not like a lot different, but it's around 0.4 of a second different on the other two. And what was interesting about this is that I was consistently running times in the 26s. So 226.252, 226.448, 226.672. I was consistently running times in the 26s, and then I ran one time in the 27s. I ran only one time in the 26s with the full camber and no height adjustment. And I ran a couple of times in the narrow tallest one in the 26s, but it was consistently in the 26s. And I couldn't figure out what it was. Not that 0.4 is a huge difference. It's not something that I would say, oh, there's an issue with the physics here. But I think visually the car reacted differently. Having the car be all the way tall really was jarring visually. Like it felt like the car had way more body rock. It felt like I was adjusting for the steering a little bit differently because visually I'm looking at a car that's moving. Now the physics of the car, the underneath of the car probably was doing the same thing, but visually, because the car was so tall, it rocked side to side a lot more. It felt like it bounced a little bit more. It was just, these are feelings, right? This is not like actual data, but it just felt like it was off. When I lowered the car, it felt way more stable. Like it just seemed stable. And I think that's a visual thing. Like we're watching the car not have as much suspension travel because the car is lower to the ground. So I think that with that visual difference, actually you can perform better with the car lower. Now I know that's a thing in real life when you have the center of gravity or the center of mass. Obviously the car is going to have better handling. So there could be some sort of physics tied to that, but I really don't think it is. To me, it felt way more like something that was in my head as I was driving the car. It felt better to have the car lower. Now, I don't know what that is, and I don't feel like I'm making any conclusions based on that. In general, I think these are visual only. Like that's my real conclusion to this after all the data. This is a visual only thing. They made it to where the wheel can move freely visually, but not affect the physics of the vehicle. And I think that's the case with all of the adjustments. But mentally, when you see the car bouncing like that, I think there's something to that. I think that you can drive the car better when it's lower. Anyways, I feel like I repeated myself like 4 times just now. There certainly isn't enough data to make a claim that it does affect it. And on top of that, IVT said themselves that it doesn't affect it. So I'm inclined to believe them on this one. I feel like they solved the problem while offering us a new thing like stance, but making sure that it didn't change the physics of the game. I feel like they definitely did a good job there. Now, one last point, as I was testing this, I did go back and I tested the wide bodies and the tires, and that stuff still has an effect. So whatever you do with the stance, not gonna affect anything. Wide bodies and vanity tires, unfortunately, still affect the cars. All right, that's it for this one, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully this helps, and I will catch you on the next one. Trigger out.